Welcome to episode 73 of the Adventures in Adversity podcast. We are taking a look back on seasons 1 and 2, 50 lessons from my first 50 guests. Thank you so much. If you are a guest and you are listening, you have no idea how grateful I am that you actually believed in me and decided to come on the show. Because of you, I am now unstoppable. So thank you. Appreciate you, every single one of you. And in your honor, all 50 of you, are going to be the topic of today's episode. I'm going to go through and really just look at each guest and whatever comes to mind as the lesson that I take away, like what I think of or what I associate with each guest. That's what I'm going to do to kind of give a synopsis of hopefully what is a quick, efficient, and inspiring 50 lessons from my incredible 50 guests on the podcast. All right, we're diving right in, guys. So we are going to episode, I'm going to say the title one more time. I am going to say the episode number, the title of the episode, and I'm going to say the first thing that comes to mind and the lesson I learned. And if that sounds interesting to you, that lesson, then you can be like, hey, might consider watching that episode. You choose. Just let me know. I'm just giving you, dangling the carrot of what the potential inspiration you might get. All right. So the first time I actually did 9 episodes without guests. And you'll hear in the first 9 episodes, I'm like, one day I'll have guests. Unstoppable. Thank you very much. Don't give up because I used to have no guests. If you email enough people and you ask enough times, if you build it, they will come. All right. Episode 10, Gratitude Through the Storm. Margot Wickersham shares her victory over cancer. First thing that comes to mind, the gratitude game. Margot talks about how she was fighting bladder cancer during COVID, went through grief, had her bladder removed, lost people, was dealing with a lot. Wrote a book called Gratitude in the Storm, When Not Dying is Enough to Keep Fighting. And she said that she used to play the gratitude game in her hospital bed to think of anything that she was grateful for. Grateful that she could move her pinky. I'm grateful for the fact that I can feel the sheets on the bed. That got her through her darkest moments, which involved a lot of really dark mental health moments as well as physical. So play the gratitude game. Episode 10. Episode 11, CMO and mom of 2, Anita Tulsiani, on building her career, starting a marketing agency, and beating breast cancer. So Anita is a friend of my dad's. He mentored her and they worked together back at Dell back in the day. And the big lesson from her, she talks about building her career as a woman, being a chief marketing officer, all of the obstacles that came there, and beating breast cancer. She said she was in disbelief when she was diagnosed. And then just how she got through it. She says she has what she calls a board of directors for her life, where whenever she makes big decisions or is going through a hard time, she consults different people on that board of directors to get that real honest feedback and advice. So my lesson was build a board of directors in your own life if you want the truth from people who you trust, and get feedback from them when you're making decisions. Okay, episode 12, Going Inward, Navigating Grief, Health Scares, and Life's Curveballs with my friend Omira. My friend Omira, the lesson I think of here is if you stuff the feelings down, they will come back eventually. She talked about how she lost her dad at age 16 suddenly. She's the youngest in a big family, and how she didn't deal with that grief. And then she ended up, a couple of years later, she had a big tumor in her chest that she had removed. They didn't know if it was cancer, but she ended up really stuffing those feelings down. And she talks about how diet, lifestyle, and really just like confronting your emotions can really affect your physical health and mental health. So really great episode. She's very honest, and she's one of my besties too. All right. Another one of my besties, maybe my bestie, episode 13, my number one bestie, my hubby Ryan. We talked about this was back June 7th, 2024, about how he had just gotten laid off a few days before. Yeah, that was tough. And unfortunately, he is still looking for a job. It's a tough market out there. We're in the Bay Area in tech, and lots of people looking for jobs for a small amount of jobs, right? So my lesson from him every day and from this episode is he doesn't play the victim. He is very logical, and he doesn't stop what he's going through from, making sure he's working out, being present with the kids, helping me, supporting me while I'm working, while he's looking. So I think the lesson there is just he doesn't complain. He's You just got to deal with it, right? And we're a team and we've made it work. So I will have him back to celebrate his new fantastic job. It is coming in 2026. Just going through some adversity right now. All right. The next guest I had, episode 17. We had a part 1 and part 2 with this is called K Floor's founder Brian Ketting on transforming poverty, doubt, and a broken back into personal and professional success. In part 2, he talks about how he learned to walk again after he broke his back, how he delivered his daughter at home, a surprise home birth, and the power of self-love. So Brian, gosh, I feel like I'm not doing any of these stories justice, but again, one episode, trying to summarize 50 here. He talked about how he grew up in poverty. I think he talks about how he slept in a tent outside his mom's trailer at one point. And now he owns a floors business and worked through just all of that, trauma as a kid. And then started his floors business. But before that, when he was a painter, he actually fell down off scaffolding, and he tells the story, and he broke his back. So he had to go to a rehab center, learn to walk, and just talks about that and what that was like, and how just the whole journey of his life. Been through some hard stuff. And I think the lesson there when I think about Brian, he talked about Stoicism, and I didn't know what that was at the time. And it was, Marcus Aurelius, ancient Greek, ancient Roman, all of that history about Stoicism and how to deal with life. And that kind of got me reading about it, which is really interesting, which there's another episode about Stoicism later. But I think the lesson there is he's tough, but, really in touch with his emotions. And you can tell he's done a lot of healing work. So great 2-part episode 17. All right, episode 18, Mariah Melendez, LMHCA, her journey to becoming a licensed therapist and nurturing self-compassion. So I met Mariah. She was in my cohort when I did this business mastermind a year ago to try to learn how to start a podcast. She was learning how to scale her private practice. And I luckily got placed in a group with a cohort group where it was like all therapists building their businesses and me, which I am not a therapist, but I got to meet and learn from and kind of like get mentored by people who were building their own therapy practices. And, therapists are amazing. So we talked about her journey towards becoming a therapist and how I was actually shocked that she dealt with so much anxiety and OCD. And I was like, whoa, yeah, therapists are people too. And I think a lot of times they maybe unlock some secrets, or not really secrets, but some tools on how to make themselves better. And then they want to coach others. So really cool. Mariah is one of a few therapists I've had on. It's episode 18. Then we have a couple episodes where I'm just talking, episode 19 and 20. Episode 21, it was super cool that this is Mariah. So episode 18 was Mariah Melendez, and then 21 was her husband, Parker Melendez. How firefighter, EMT, and emergency management specialist Parker Melendez uses Stoicism to handle adversity. So super cool here, right? He why did I say that? I just got distracted. It is super cool. I just lost my train of thought. He's her husband, so that's super cool that I interviewed him. And he was an EMT, and he talks about the trauma of seeing what EMTs see, of having to kind of be calm in situations where your body just isn't naturally calm. Um, you know, coming into life and death situations. And now he actually does emergency management special, like I think when with fires, um it's more of like a administrative position now, but he knows um how to kind of like deploy resources in emergency situations up in the Pacific Northwest. So he's a really calm energy. Talks about how he's used stoicism and the teachings of Marcus Aurelius. There's a book called The Meditations, and just all the stoicism philosophy of like bettering yourself and, you know, self-reliance and working on yourself every day, and how he's used that in his life to handle adversity. So really cool conversation with him. Really calm, self-assured guy. Episode 22, Ankal Aurora on the healing power of poetry in her book, The Efflorescence. So I interviewed her. She actually lives in India. I think she was one of my first international guests back in episode 22. This was September 5th of 2024. And she wrote a book called The Efflorescence, and it's a poetry book. She talks about her mom, about love, about healing, and she's like really gentle and like just I admire how she just literally opened her heart and puts her poetry out there and what published it. I think she's got her PhD in something with poetry. But basically how she just took that pain and is very raw and vulnerable in the poetry, and took that adversity and turned it into art. And her book is available on Amazon as well, her book of poetry. So definitely check that out if you are a poet or just a person that needs to heal. That works too. Okay, what are we at here? How am I doing? How am I doing on the synopsis? I don't know because I can't hear myself. But Julian, how am I doing? Hopefully you're laughing and nodding, saying good as you're editing this. 13 minutes. How am I doing? Okay, episode 23, Redefining Disability. Insights from Jay, a 27-year-old fitness trainer living with cerebral ataxia. Oh, I don't even know where to start with Jay. He's so incredible. Jay is a guy I met via Instagram, via one of his very, very inspirational reels. He has cerebral ataxia, so he can't move parts of his body. It's very difficult for him to walk and do certain things. So he is just dedicated to building up his strength. He's trying to raise money for this special wheelchair that will allow him to go explore the cities. He lives in London, and he's just a beautiful human being, who, you can see that everyday things that are a struggle, but he doesn't. He talks about his gratitude and just his faith in God, um, and just how he gets through his life, living with this, that he was diagnosed when he was 15, and just how he talks about how mental health is so important, whether you're someone with different abilities or not, that we all need to check on each other and stay connected, because it's hard out there. So very inspiring episode 27, and can't say enough amazing things about Jay and like his mental and physical fortitude uh, in the face of big time adversity. Okay, episode 25, This is a different take on adversity with my amazing friend Josh, finding humor in adversity, how my friend, comedy writer Josh Lebowitz, laughs through life. Now, Josh and I, we worked at ServiceNow together for a year or two, and the big lesson that I can get from Josh is that laughter is incredible medicine. He's the funniest person I've ever met. He was a comedy writer for Comedy Central. He worked with Jon Stewart in New York. He's hilarious. He does voiceover work. He was the voice of HBO Family for a while, the voiceover. He was runner up for voice of Tony the Tiger for Frosted Flakes for all the people that are older, that are my age and older. Back in the day, you remember Tony the Tiger? He almost was that voice, but his voice is incredible. He's hilarious. Just full of life and full of energy, and just talks about parenting and work and being yourself. And he actually got his first voiceover job and got the HBO Family job when the network was just starting by just jumping in the booth and going for it. And it wasn't even an audition. So, my lesson there, go for it. Who cares? Life is short. Laugh. Seriously, hilarious episode. I'm dying throughout it. If you want a good laugh, episode 25. All right, and then I do a couple episodes with just me. And then here we go, episode 28. Knowledge is Power. Michelle's journey through a BRCA1 gene mutation diagnosis and a double mastectomy. Whew, I think that you can tell that episode is no joke. Michelle took preventative measures. She's a local mom here and a friend. We were room moms together when our kids were in kindergarten. She her grandma had ovarian cancer, and she with her ethnicity was 80% Ashkenazi Jew, 80% likely to develop breast cancer with this gene. She had this mutation. So a few years ago, she had a elective surgery, double mastectomy, to remove both breasts. And she talks about the importance of knowing your medical history, discussing your options, and then the journey of what that was like physically, mentally, as a woman, having your breasts removed. Obviously, a huge, huge change and huge identities, just a lot of things after, feeding your children. And just, she talks about the whole journey. So, Michelle, incredible woman, tough as nails, and really, really powerful episode. Oh, episode 29. Oh, man. My number one episode, my most popular episode on all platforms. Yeah. Episode 29, my interview with Professor Sam Vaknin, Why Narcissists Must Abuse You. That was kicking off, that was January 9th of last year, an hour and a half interview with the guy, the professor who coined the term narcissistic abuse in the 70s or 80s, he says. He wrote he's at 10 or 12 editions of a handbook on narcissism, like the malignant narcissist. And like, basically that's used in a lot of collegiate psychology classes as like the Bible of narcissism. He is a self-aware diagnosed narcissist. There is a Vice News documentary on him called I, Psychopath. And probably this hour and a half changed my life. Not probably. It changed everything for me. It helped me make sense of my experience with narcissistic abuse, which is why I started the podcast. And I could talk for hours about this episode, but he talks about the psyche of a narcissist and why they do what they do to you. I'll just say that. Very, very powerful episode. Okay, episode 30, From Gloves to Pen, Boxing, Writing, and Life Lessons with author Mark Connor. Now we are at 20 minutes. Yay, I'm doing well. Almost there. Maybe about halfway there, I think. He lives in Minnesota. He talks about his journey and his book. He wrote a book, actually, and the name here is the book he wrote is called, I have it here. It's About Time. Millions of copies sold for Dad. And it's a mix of poetry and his story. He started boxing at the age of 10. He talks about like the mental and physical preparation. He's in the Minnesota Boxers Hall of Fame. Amazing. And now he trains boxers and is a writer and talks about his belief in God. He talks about the rigorous training he went through, just boxing in general, which is super interesting, and like the physical and mental stamina you have to kind of to be in that sport. It's pretty incredible. So, episode 30, he just real honest, authentic, salt of the earth Minnesota guy. Obviously, there's a lot going on in Minnesota right now. Don't even get me started on the fraud, different podcast. But love Mark, love his book, and have it here on my shelf. And he's just a really old school guy and just talks about the world of boxing, which is super cool. I love boxing. I love boxing movies. So that's episode 30. Episode 32. Are you still with me, guys? Push pause if you need to, but come on back. Episode 32, From Soccer Fields to Robo Taxis, a conversation with my friend Raj on life, love, loss, and technology. This is a cool episode. Raj is a neighborhood dad. We were coaches. Our kids play together, soccer coaches together. His wife, Ashita, gave me the original microphone and told me I had to start a podcast. So love this family. They're amazing. Thank you, Ashita. Raj talks about how when he was younger, losing his dad at a very young age, around age 9, to a sudden heart attack, how he dealt with that. Moving from Canada to the US, he's Canadian, and taking a chance on a job with this company called Tesla when it was early on. He talks about working directly he reported directly to Elon Musk. Super interesting interview. And he's such a humble guy. Raj is he's brilliant. He's now leading a team of people at Zoox, which is a self-driving taxi company. So he was in early at Tesla and helped design the UX of like the panel. Super humble guy. We sit down for a couple hours and just talk about everything: grief, raising a family, career, working for Elon, specific stories he shares about what happened and what that was like. That's episode 32. Very, very interesting. Love Raj. Okay, episode 34. Oh, it's her birthday today. My bestie, Brianna. Love you. Shooting the breeze with my bestie and me, aka comedic reflections on handling life's challenges. Brianna is my bestie of 20 years. I met her when we were teachers in Spain a year after college. I was a teacher intern, and so was she at the American School of Madrid. And she is the sister I've never had. I love her. She kicks my ass when she needs to and is always there for me through all of my ups and downs. I love her. And we basically just make fun of each other for most of the episode. Seriously, it's funny. And talk about raising kids, our 20s, being stupid and dumb. She's raising 2 boys. She's got a master's in early childhood education. So she talks about being a kindergarten teacher, going on 15 plus years now, and just raising kids with screens, discipline, what she sees at school, blah, blah, blah. And again, most importantly, she makes fun of me. Episode 34. Woo! Look at this little synopsis. All right, what time are we at now? 24 minutes. Killing it. Again, hopefully this just gives you a little bit of a peek into each episode. So then you can be like, I want to listen to all of them, or that specific one might be able to help you. So that's episode 34. Happy birthday, Brianna. It's her actual birthday today. Episode 35, Chaos, Comedy, and Keeping It Real. Meg's and Nick's Survival Guide for Life. So this was my first in-person interview with Megan and Nick, and I actually had never met Nick before that day, which was super cool. And Megan is my OG friend. She and I played adult soccer on Wednesday nights for a couple of years together. So she and I, um, she's just hilarious. So I basically go over to her house and we talk about the ups and downs of life through parenting, marriage, job loss, all sorts of things. Um, on a more serious note, she, I believe, has had, I think she talks about 3 miscarriages she's had and just how she's dealt with that. Um, and she's got 2 healthy, beautiful girls now. But for anyone going through that or have a friend or family member going through that, she's just really honest about it. So, and there's a lot of laughs in there as well, because we talk about how comedy, and Nick's actually trying to be a stand-up comedian. So was able to see him go do a set and just talks about how you got to go for things in life, stand-up comedy, with anything. So he's an accountant. He's just talks about hobbies and painting and all the things that the shenanigans that the 3 of us were getting into that day. It's pretty funny. So enjoy episode 35. Okay, episode 36. Episode 36 and 37 back to back both had the same topic. Oh, sorry, I just bumped into my microphone. About vision loss. Totally unplanned. But episode 36, Vision Beyond Sight, Kiwan Amy's journey of resilience, faith, and purpose. So I interviewed Kiwan. He's an Air Force veteran, author, an incredible human who wrote a book about his experience. It's called Why. It's called Don't Say Why. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me look. It is called, his book, Don't Focus on Why Me: From Motorcycle Accident to Miracle. So when he was 25, I think about 5 years ago, he had a motorcycle accident and was not his fault. Someone turned and he got in a really life threatening accident, and he lost his sight. And so that did not keep him down. Trust me. You'll hear in this episode basically about his whole experience of leading up to the accident. What happened, the recovery, his relationship with God. He was in the Air Force before he lost his sight and was a in-flight refueler, a boom operator. So he talks about his role doing that, military service, and just his incredible comeback and how he wrote the book. And he is blind. And it's wild to me how resilient and incredible he is. He's ripped. He works out. He posts his video workouts. He does like, you know, different competitions with he's just, again, one of those people, like, never a victim, and just his life. And I admire him so much. Don't know what to say. Episode 37, Anne Mock, seeing strength, overcoming adversity, and keeping her purpose in view. So she is an author, an advocate, a storyteller, and she has degenerative retinoid pigmentosa or some. Let me see what she says here. I want to make sure I get it right here. She was diagnosed with, cone rod dystrophy and lost her vision. She actually lives with a chronic condition known as new daily persistent headache, NDPH, and she battled debilitating pain and depression, losing her mom, raising kids, having to quit her job because she couldn't see. She can see shadows, she talks about, but just the whole process of losing her vision. And I learned a lot in that episode about vision loss and how it is actually a spectrum. So it's blindness is a spectrum where some people you're not you the varying degrees to which you see it really depends on your condition and the person. So just giving a voice to vision loss. She's an incredible person. Oh man. Okay. I hope I'm not skipping these over too quickly. But again, 50 lessons, 50 guests. So we got to keep moving. Episode 38. This is a two-parter with my amazing friend Meryl Alizada. She's a kindness advocate and founder of Results of Kindness. And she works with companies to try to basically explain the misconception of kindness. People think it's sort of this weak thing and it's this like pushover, the nice thing. But I'm going to quote from the show notes here. We explore the profound impact of kindness on human relationships and societal structures, how kindness is a fundamental aspect of human survival and development, and specifically how she's trying to bring kindness into the workplace and kind of show the ROI of kindness, how it's good for business and empathetic leaders, and empathy meaning caring for people in the right way, not just kind of letting the bullies at work overtake the quieter people. So we talk a lot about kindness and her company that she started on episode 38. Okay, episode 39. I'm like just transitioning to the next one and the next one. I don't know how to like smoothly do that, but got to keep going. Episode 39. Yogita's Light, a father's journey through darkness and discovery through the lens of myopia. So I talked to a man named Mohan Rao about his multiple books he's written. He wrote a book. I was just looking at my bookshelf over there. He wrote a book about his journey through the Himalayas. And then he wrote another book about his daughter. She passed away from cancer when she was young. And about his daughter, she was born without the ability to see, and actually had her eyes removed as well. So it was just a very tough story to hear. And it was just having a kid. It was really emotional to think about what you would do when a kid is born unable to see, and it's just like how he navigated that. And again, tough topic, but he is a very spiritual person and wrote his book about how he dealt with that, grief, illness, all the things in his life. So really, really strong person to be able to get through that. Okay, the next episode here. Let me just lost my place there. The next episode, or the next guest I talked to, that would be Jackie, episode 40, Tapping into Healing with Jackie Durnan, founder of Hinterland Health Retreat, the emotional freedom technique and trauma recovery. This I recorded during Mental Health Awareness Month. Jackie founded Hinterland Health Retreat in Australia. So this is like a beautiful place you go to heal from trauma. And she talks about how her own childhood trauma, there was some sexual abuse, how she learned this emotional freedom technique, the tapping, and how powerful that is. And basically her center that she started, it's a residential treatment center where you can go and have your brain studied, have, learn where trauma lives in your body, have intensive therapy, and just how she's learned how much trauma lives in your body. So really, really interesting take on healing from both somebody who is like educated and owns a treatment center, as well as somebody who has been through it herself. So that's episode 40. Episode 41, How Sylvie Alchemizes Pain into Power, Healing from Domestic Violence and Narcissistic Abuse. So this episode, and I'm just checking, we're at 35 minutes, and let's keep going. Episode 41, she talks about, she is my dear friend. She talks about the quiet, confusing world of emotional abuse and how she escaped that relationship with a narcissist partner. She does co-parent with that person now, but she's very honest about what she went through, how she was able to recognize that it was abuse, how she got therapy, ended up becoming a healer herself and an advocate for domestic abuse victims. She volunteered at a local shelter here called Shepherd's Gate. And basically, we're just really honest and we laugh and we get emotional and just kind of talk about what she's been through and how to handle and deal with narcissists. It's really straight up, no bullshit. Episode 41. And I love her to death, and she's the best. Episode 42, From Coma to Comeback, Nick Prefontaine on overcoming trauma using his STEP method. So Nick is a speaker, author, and real estate investor. He is somebody who survived a life-threatening snowboarding accident in his 20s. Sorry. He was 14, actually. He was in a snowboarding accident that left him in a coma. And he talks about the comeback and how in life, when you're overcoming anything, all you need to do is figure out the next step. And he even signs his emails. I think it's like just the next step or one step at a time. And that's his whole philosophy. And he actually has a coaching program based on his experience coming out of a coma and recovering on how to get through how to get through anything in life using his method. Really humble guy, really cool, takes you through what it was like during that recovery and just how he helps his clients kind of come back from what they're going through in their life one step at a time. Episode 43, Fix Your Reflection First, Rhonda Farah's journey through breast cancer, prison, and purpose. So in this episode, Rhonda she was a former psychotherapist. She's now a female empowerment coach. She talks about how she didn't do her due diligence with some investments business and was implicated in some fraud and spent some time in prison. And she talks all about it, about her time in prison, about what happened, about things she did wrong, about things she learned. And she's just really honest and blunt about what she went through. And she talks about fixing your reflection first and how like everything healing is all about looking at yourself, really looking at yourself in the mirror and like taking accountability. And it was just really, really interesting to hear her take on, what she did in prison and just what people were going through. So that's episode 44. Episode 45, Carrying Sam's Light, Brotherhood, Healing Through Shame, and Breaking the Silence on Mental Health with Jake and Joe Sharp. All right, so in this episode, this was a tough one. I adore Jake and Joe. It was a tough one because the topic was suicide and how they lost their younger brother, Sam, to suicide about 5 years ago. And he was like the light in everyone's life. And they're from a big, close family. And they talk about how hard that was and how they're now advocates for mental health. They post very openly about suicide prevention and just how really it's a tribute to Sam's memory and like how important it is we talk a lot about shame and dark times, and like it's just a really open and honest conversation because a lot of people, especially young people, but older people too, are suffering and feel like they don't have a place to go, or they feel shame. And um, suicide, we talk about how suicide is never that answer. And so they're just incredible people, love their family. So episode 45, it's all about carrying Sam's light and his legacy. Episode 46, with the imperfect level up, real talk on healing, self-love, and why becoming is messy, with coach, speaker, and podcaster Megan Dawson. So in this episode, Megan is real. She has her own podcast. Check it out, called Becoming is Messy. I think she just wrote a book. I just saw a post on that. She talks about her journey through trauma, chronic pain, and low self-esteem, and how she was always looking for love sort of in all the wrong places. She talks about marriage. She talks about taking wrong turns and just looking outside for validation. And we talk about how the whole journey of becoming is messy, right? Becoming who you are, and how it's not this like linear thing that looks all perfect, like a highlight reel. So she's as real as they come, and we just kind of have an honest conversation about, you know, wrong turns we both took and how it's kind of messy, but here we are. So, episode 47, Narcissists at Work, the Hidden Cost of Charisma. This is the Results of Kindness podcast launch. So my friend Meryl, she was on a previous episode as well, talking about Results of Kindness, her own company. And then she actually, on episode 47, we posted this here and on her podcast as her debut episode. And we talk about the hidden cost of charisma, narcissists at work, like how these people get promoted, how they get into positions of leadership, and how the hell we deal with it. Signs to look for, tools to cope with narcissists at work, and basically how her company, Results of Kindness, is basically the opposite of, trying to develop leaders and people who are not narcissists. And narcissists are devoid of empathy and incapable of self-reflection. So you don't want those at work, but you got them at work. And how do you deal with them? So she and I have both had experience with narcissists, and we ain't playing around on that episode. So thank you very much. All right. Moving along. Episode 48, Young Children, Big Life Lessons. Nisha Batra on early childhood education, disability, and belonging. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. This was super cool. Nisha is amazing. She is a early childhood educator and fierce advocate for people with different abilities. So she has a nonverbal learning disability, and she just talks openly and wants to represent the importance of like not only including people with different abilities, but just being kind and like understanding what they're going through, but also not limiting yourself. Like we talk about how she's doing a lot of amazing things, and she has a partner, and she's um, just like she was saying, creating space for the stories of people who have visible and non-visible different abilities, because sometimes you can't see it and sometimes you obviously can. But she talks about storytelling and how by telling our stories meaning from the community, the different people of different abilities, them having the ability to tell their stories, how that in itself is a form of advocacy, and giving them a voice. So I'm like super proud to be a podcast that really is, I have a special place in my heart for anyone with any kind of different ability. So please take a listen to episode 48. She's just brilliant and amazing. All right. The next guest I had after episode 48 was episode 49, Raheel Siddiqui, on losing 200 pounds, becoming a wall breaker, and finding self-love and more. Raheel is a badass. He lost 200 pounds many years ago before all the GLP drugs. I'm not hating on him. I think they're not healthy. But he lost it the good old fashioned way, and he has a relentless spirit. He talks about being morbidly obese and being told by the doctor that he's going to be he's like, doesn't matter, you're going to be dead by the time you're 40. And this, and how like that shocked him, and he thought that he says he remembers being in the car and his dad pulled over after that appointment and was crying and just was like, you got to promise me that you're going to change your life and lose the weight. And he said he kept that promise to his dad, and now he goes around all these, he's been a TED Talk speaker. He goes around podcasts. He has his own podcast where he just tells his story. He talks about how people used to make fun of him. He tells those stories and how like those still echo, and those, he's turned that into motivation. And I just love him so much. He's my homie. He's got so much energy. We're actually going to have him back, I think, this month to talk. I was just messaging him, but breaking down walls. He talks about you got to lower your shoulder, any wall in your life, lower it and bust through it. Great episode. Episode 50, Building Brighter Futures for Foster Kids with Fostering Wishes founder Sabine Lemo. So this is a friend of mine I met locally here in the last year. She founded a nonprofit here in the Bay Area called Fostering Wishes. She fostered, I believe, about 24 foster kids in her own home, and then ended up adopting her daughter, Valerie, when she was little. And now she basically, her organization tries to supplement the gaps between the state funding and what the foster kids actually need. So we talk about how, for example, when foster kids are moving from home to home, they told her that trash bags are not really, don't make them feel good, that they make them feel like trash. So she has a duffel bag program where we meaning, I've helped with one event, so not we, her, where she and Fostering Wishes uh, gather duffel bags for kids. They develop trade school scholarships, just, you know, Christmas gift drives, all kinds of things to supplement what, the state can't provide. And just like a reminder that foster kids are everywhere and you just don't know it. So you just never know like what kinds of things people are going home to. Episode 51, Sacred Story Counseling, Helping Women Heal with licensed professional counselor, Hannah Sinkovitz. All right. So this one, doing another time check, 47 minutes. If you're still with me, thank you. Go ahead. Episode 51, Helping Women Heal. Hannah, like Mariah, was actually in my cohort for like a business mastermind for like baby entrepreneurs like me a year ago. And she started her own private practice in Michigan, and she helps women kind of overcome the perfectionism, anxiety, all kinds of things. And she does therapy intensives. She's just a badass. I love her. She's super real. She is a mom. She played collegiate soccer. She was raised Christian, but she like talks about how parts of that were a little bit repressive, but she's still Christian. But I love how she's just like real about the good and bad parts of everything. And she's a very compassionate, amazing counselor. We're each other's hype people. We hype each other up because we basically started this at the same time, like building our online presence. So she has a special place in my heart. She's actually going to come back and talk about the mental load of motherhood this year. So I love Hannah. It's like a free counseling session there, episode 51. Another free counseling session, episode 52, Life Review, the Hospice Musical with Benjamin Kintish, From a Chaplain's Heart to Center Stage. So he is a chaplain. He is Jewish and hilarious guy who just heart of gold, basically created, he was a hospital chaplain who would counsel people, as they were dying and counsel their family members. And talks about that whole experience, how to comfort people, what he learned from his faith as well as his training as a chaplain. And then he created a musical called Life Review, the hospice musical. And he talks about musical theater and how he has a dream to turn this into a Broadway show. And he does in person, live, and virtual performances of the musical. You got to look into it, but it's basically like, celebrates life, love, loss, and like how to deal with all of that. And I think he's so funny that it's really cool to get like somebody who's hilarious, who's also, counseled people in their darkest hours. Really cool guy. Okay. I hope I'm not doing disservice by going this quickly, but this is an overview episode. I keep talking about it. Okay. Episode 53, Faith and Adversity. Wake Up Jesus People author Jason Heinrichs on powerful sacred starts. So Jason wrote a book called Wake Up Jesus People. He really successful businessman, and he also just started a church with him and his wife. Him and his wife and family started a church. A couple days after they filmed this episode, they moved to Seattle. And they started a church, and he talks about his book and how it's a guide for people to, like, he talks about how you got to put Jesus first, then your family, then your job, and like literally his book is like a guide. He has like a 40 days, like a group where you can join, and it's a challenge to get up and every day spend like half an hour with the Bible and then a half an hour of movement. And he calls that a sacred start. And he's just a really successful, awesome guy, super confident and like real, and like talks about how he just didn't used to be happy, but he had all his success. And then just a very practical episode that you can like apply to your life. And if you're looking for that faith as well. So that's episode 53. All right, I'm gonna stretch. Oh my gosh, a lot of cracking in my back. Okay. Okay, episode 54, Jim Serrano's courageous journey through adoption, abuse, and redemption. His healing path. I love Jim. So he was adopted when he was 6 months old. He talks about what that has been like. Just the search for his parents, how he found them, what it was like, how it's not really like a Hallmark movie a lot of the times when you reunite with your birth family. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And he talks about how he's writing a book and how him sharing his story about like feelings of suicide and mental health problems. He's doing great now. He's in his 60s. But just how sharing his story, he actually had a kid come up to him when he was at a Muay Thai tournament, because he does Muay Thai. And he said that the kid said, "Hey, I heard you on a podcast the other day." This was like a different podcast, not mine. And he's like, "Oh, cool. Like, thanks for listening." And he's like, "Yeah, he said that the kid told him he planned on taking his life and decided not to because he heard his episode." And he said he cried like a baby all the way home. And that was just a reminder to me, like, you just never know who you're going to impact by being honest. So great adoption story, and he's just a great human being. So he does talk about some heavy stuff too, about abuse, and he's just really open about it. So episode 55. Is it menopause, perimenopause, or just me? Real talk with Menopause founder and certified coach, Raquel Riggle. I'm going to stand up because I've been sitting for 54 minutes. If you're still with me, you rock. Because you know what? You're getting some good wisdom here from my guests, not from me. I'm just the messenger. I'm just the I'm just the messenger. I'm just the podcaster. Oh, it feels good to stand up. Okay. Okay. So, episode 55. I laughed a lot with Raquel. Oh, I should have stood up earlier. I don't know if you'll cut this out, but if you don't, stand up and stretch with me. Unless you're in the car, don't stand up. Episode 55, Raquel is amazing. She talks about what a lot of us old ladies, I'm 44, are going through: perimenopause and menopause, and just the over 55 symptoms. Not just hot flashes, guys. We talk about the many, many symptoms that come along with menopause and perimenopause. And perimenopause is actually the period you're in, period, no pun intended, the time period, oh my gosh, the time span where you go into menopause. Technically, I'm explaining this so well. You go into menopause the day that you hit 12 months since your last period. Up until that time, you're in perimenopause. So, again, listen to it, episode 55. I am not the expert, but I am going through perimenopause, and I do sweat profusely at night. Too much information, never. Anyway, she founded a company called Menopals, where you can have a subscription, get support online. They recommend supplements, estrogen therapy. She talks all about it. So if you or your wife or your sister or someone's going through perimenopause or menopause and you want some tips on how to deal with it or help them, episode 55 is just for you. Okay, different topic. Episode 56, I had the honor and privilege of sitting down with retired Marine canine handler Alfred Brenner on surviving with grief, his book on war, service, and healing. So in this episode, of course, I want to thank him for his service. Thank Kiwan as well. All of our veterans are amazing. I sat down with him. He wrote a book about, it's called Surviving with Grief. And he was deployed in Afghanistan and lost his dog. He was a canine handler in the Marines. He and his canine were, they blew up in a roadside bomb. And it was stuck in a wall. And he tells the story about what happened, how he dealt with that, is dealing with that. It was about 15 years ago. He did have some pretty bad injuries, part of his hand, arm, and he wrote a book about it, and it's incredible, and just talks about in great detail what it was like being deployed and how he has just survived with grief since then. So a beautiful tribute to our servicemen and women who are, I don't even know, can't say enough about them. All right, episode 57, 19-year-old Wilson Munsterman on resilience, identity, and his book, Marked by Adoption. So in this episode, 19-year-old, my second youngest guest, Amir, 17, talk about him in a few minutes. Wilson is 19. He wrote a book called Marked by Adoption, and he's incredible. He's in college. I think he's a sophomore. He tells a story about how he was left on a doorstep in China when he was a few months old, and how he was eventually adopted by an American family, and how that was just such an unlikely story because of China's one-child policy, and the fact that he got to America with an amazing family. He says that had to have been God, and he talks about his journey and just what it was like, what it is like being adopted, and why he wrote this book and how it has changed his life. Adoption in good ways and hard ways. And he's just really honest. He's a great, great kid. He's an adult now, 19, but he's so young. He talks about how he loves Elvis and Johnny Cash, and just a really, really resilient, awesome person. He's got a wonderful energy. So that's episode 57. And we are at 59 minutes. Okay. The last leg of this episode, episode 59, Radically Rooted, adoptee coach Julie Brumley on adoption, trauma, and coming home to self. So, another incredible adoptee. We have Wilson, Jim, and now Julie, all adopted. She was adopted and talks all about her experience, and she's now an adoptee coach who helps other adoptees reclaim their own identity and find themselves. She talks about She actually just started a podcast too called The Resilience Project. And um, she is hilarious, genuine, and talks about how just the journey of finding her parents and then sort of how adoption within itself. She says a lot of people get mad at her when she says this, but even if you're adopted into a good family, which she was, how any adoption is trauma because you're not it's traumatic for your nervous system. And so she's just really real about her experience. And again, we laugh a lot. She's got so much energy and I adore her. Another person I adore. Episode 60, Remembering Sam. Pam Sharp on family, faith, grief, and suicide prevention. I was so grateful to have Pam, who she is Jake and Joe's mother, on episode 60. And she talked about her perspective of losing her son, Sam, to suicide. She has 7 kids and is just very honest. She has a podcast called Fight Hard, Love Much that she started after his suicide. And I believe it was in 2020. He took his own life. He was a teenager. And she's just really honest about how hard it's been, and how she just wants people to know that, like, she's a safe place for anyone to come to, and just like things that she learned from that experience, parenting tips on like things that she remembers from that time. And she's just really honest about her family, their faith, the grief that they're going through, and what we can do to prevent suicide. She's an incredible woman. Episode 61. Now, this is talking about my editor, who will be the first one to hear these words. Episode 61 from I just hit my head, face, chin. Ugh, I can't talk. Episode 61 from 7th grade dreamer to music industry producer. He is unstoppable. My reunion with Julian. He is known as Jack Efron as well. He is the podcast producer and editor of this podcast. And we just take a walk down memory lane and talk about how I was his 7th grade math teacher. Pretty hilarious. When I was 25, he was 12 or 13, and I taught math and science. And then we've stayed connected on Facebook, and we just talk about how I had no idea what I was doing, but I tried my best. And we just talked about that school and our experience in Arizona and what a special place it was. And then how we reconnected, or we stayed connected on Facebook for 20 years, and then just started chatting, and how we both have been through like a narcissistic abuse experience. And here we are working together 20 years later. Who knew? Who knew? So really cool walk down memory lane with my homie, Julio Iglesias. Episode 61. Episode 62. We are coming up close here. Adversity, DMT, and self-acceptance. Adam Butler's journey through addiction, healing, and psychedelic insight. This one is amazing. He calls himself a psychonaut. Adam Butler. He wrote a book on DMT. It's called Butler's DMT Field Guide, a brief history, step-by-step recipes, and personal experiences from a DMT-saturated consciousness. Holy moly. We talk psychedelics. We talk about DMT, this spirit molecule, and how he just is really honest about how he used to be an alcoholic. He's now 5 years sober on New Year's Day. He posted about that the other day. Congratulations. He talks about how he kind of lost everything, and how DMT and psychedelics changed his life. And he's honest about like wrong turns he made, how he was just not the greatest version of himself, and how he has changed. Talks a lot about mental health, and just the power of DMT and psychedelics to help with mental health. Really, really interesting guy, and great energy as well. So that was episode 62. Episode 63. Sylvia's back. She was on episode 41. This time, this was in person in an Oakland podcast studio. Coach Sylvie on healing the root, turning pain into empowered living. She talks specifically from the perspective as she's a healing coach now, and she talks about how all pain stems from a root, and how just we walk through trauma and how you have to heal that root. And we just laugh and talk about how to recover from abuse from her perspective. So she's amazing. Episode 64, Adversity to Advocacy, Carolyn Dreyer's story, escaping domestic abuse and promoting mental health recovery. Carolyn, she has been through a lot. She is the fourth adoptee. She was adopted as well and has been through sexual assault, mental health issues. She talks a story about how she packed up in the middle of the night to escape her abusive husband with the help of coworkers. Sounds like a movie. And how she's raising her son. Just a lot. She was mixed race, Korean and African American, and the challenges that came with that. And she now just writes about her mental health recovery. And so she's a very strong woman, and super grateful to have had her story on the podcast. Again, just very real about what she went through. Episode 65, Life Beyond Law Enforcement, with retired officer and gang detective Manny Angulo, PTSD recovery. This is my producer Jack's dad, Manny. Badass. He was an undercover gang detective in Arizona, and he now has a nonprofit dedicated to helping first responders recover from PTSD. Seriously, that's pretty damn cool. And we talk about his journey, the things he saw as a police officer and detective, the trauma that they see. He talks about specific experience that he still struggles with. And it just gives a voice and a face to what our first responders go through. Particularly close to my heart because I'm one of those people who back the blue, and I know our police officers have gotten some hate in recent years, and I'm just not here for it. So talks about what it was like being an undercover detective, and just incredible story, because until I think you've been in that situation, I can't imagine what that must have been like. But great stories. And he talks about just what he's doing in his community in Phoenix to help officers, current and retired, who are struggling. All right, episode 66, The Weight of Our Emotional Backpacks. Steve unpacks trauma to inspire hope beyond drinking. Love Steve. He has a podcast called No Alcohol Needed. He is a great guy, Canadian, hilarious. Canadian people are always hilarious. He talks about how he just was drinking all the time, and how he finally came clean that he had a problem. He talks about unpacking your trauma. It's like your emotional backpack, and each thing that we all have one, and it's like, how much are you actually carrying in your emotional backpack? So if you're carrying a lot and then you start to unpack it, and how you deal with your emotions and just all sorts of stuff. I think he's an alcohol recovery coach, and really cool conversation about, again, no holding back, about the dangers of alcohol and recovery, and how he now doesn't struggle with it. He just doesn't, alcohol isn't a part of his life, and he believes everyone can get there. Episode 67, Dr. Joy Kong, Stem Cell Doctor of the Decade. Her journey from Beijing to breakthroughs. She is an incredible woman. Grew up in communist China, fought her way to America, endured narcissistic abuse, became Stem Cell Doctor of the Decade, wrote a book about her book is super cool title. I'm going to read it here. Her book is called Tiger of Beijing, the inspirational memoir of a fierce regenerative medicine physician. We talk about medicine. We talk about wellness. We talk about abuse, recovery. We talk about mental health, career, tenacity. And she is just such a badass, I'm telling you. Really, really interesting conversation. And I think of her a lot because she just has like a strength that you can tell when you listen to the episode, like nobody's going to stop her. And nobody has stopped her and nobody will. So kick ass. All right, we are down to our last four summaries, and then you get to say goodbye to me. Episode 69, Finding God, Music and Fresh Starts with singer, performer, and creator Miranda Young. Super cool. Julian, Jack Efron, my producer, introduced me to Miranda, and we did a remote episode, and I'm actually sponsored by the company she works for, Divini, a honey-based kombucha tea. This is actually sponsored. Every episode sponsored by them, so you can use Brienne 10 at checkout for a discount. Sparkling honey kombucha. Alrighty, back to Miranda. Miranda talked about her career as a singer. She talks about mental health and like dealing with her dad going through bladder cancer and how they were praying and she sort of like felt the Holy Spirit come over her, and how since then she and the founders of Divini have actually been learning more about God and like going to church, and like her life changes, and just we just talk about life and faith, and we're both kind of on this journey where we were raised Catholic, but we're like rediscovering the personal relationship with Jesus and spirituality. So love her, and she's a really talented singer, and you can find her stuff on Spotify. Miranda Young. Okay, episode 70, Escaping Abuse, Roseanne Mayer's story, Bones Beneath the Prairie, a memoir of survival. This was cool because she turned 70 and she's episode 70, and we didn't even plan that. And how she found me was through Sylvie's story about narcissistic abuse. And then now Sylvie and I are going to do a panel episode this year because they get along great and they're like little online besties now. I actually gave the book to Sylvie too. Anywho, this is a very serious, real conversation about the abuse, physical, mental, spiritual, she endured behind closed doors for 12 years and then finally escaped and wrote a book about it. She talks about how her husband beat her with a bedpost, how that was the end point for her, but many, many bruises and many years leading up to that. So just a real honest, raw talk about abuse and survival and faith and secrets and telling secrets and unmasking things that need to be said. So there you go. She's incredible. And she wrote a book about it. Okay, episode 71, From Managing Alanis, Beyonce, and Mariah's Millions to Addiction and Recovery, Jonathan's story. He was the business manager for Alanis Morissette, Beyonce, Mariah Carey, Matthew McConaughey, Linkin Park, all these people. And he talks about how he got caught for embezzling, I think it was $7 million from his clients, and he spent time in prison. He talks about his gambling and cocaine addiction, how he overcame that, and how he has rebuilt his life as an addiction counselor at a private treatment center in Encino, California. He's real big on accountability. I admire his ability to own his mistakes and, not worry about being judged. And it takes a lot to admit where you went wrong and try to do better. So that's episode 71 with Jonathan. Really, really cool guy, really real. And he's clearly changed a lot and learned a lot. And last but not least, episode 72, Raised in Philly, rooted in faith, 17-year-old Amir on mental health, purpose, and politics. This was my most recent episode with my youngest guest to date, Amir. He talks about being raised in Philadelphia, about how he's found God. He spent some time in a mental health treatment center in April. And what was amazing is he saw one of my reels when he was there. And I think that is incredible. And that's how we connected and just started following each other. And then I asked him to be on the podcast. He's incredible, 17. He's got a real strong point of view on politics, on being conservative, on, being a young Black male. He's very honest about that and his take on that, and racism and culture and victimhood and the left versus the right and all those things. So incredible kid, 17 years old, and really, really inspiring to see him mature like this at such a young age. I certainly did not. It's not that mature. So really, really cool conversation. And I'm episode 73. If you're still here an hour and 16 minutes later, hallelujah. If you're not, then you won't be hearing this. But no, I hope that maybe you didn't know about one of those episodes, and hearing something in my little synopsis might prompt you to give one of their stories a chance for a few minutes and see if it helps you feel less alone or helps you come up with a way to tackle maybe similar adversity in your life that some of my guests have been through. So with that, I'm going to sign off episode 73. Thank you so much to every single guest who took a chance on a little podcaster like me, begging for guests. And now I'm really grateful to be able to have guests that want to come on and share their stories. And it makes me feel less alone. It makes people in 59 countries feel less alone. And I hope that the sound of my voice and any of their lessons that I've been able to pass on from them helps you get through a hard time. Because I know when I was struggling 2.5 years ago, podcasts were a light at the end of the tunnel. So God bless you and hang in there. Do not give up. You can do this.